Good morning, happy Monday, and I'm excited that you guys are all here for this class. I think it'll be a good one. This is now part 3 of the 4-part series. We'll finish it up next week. This week we're going to talk about appliances and windows specifically. And if you can't see my screen, let me know. You should be able to see it. But as we go through today, we're going to talk a little bit about appliances. Now, we'll start talking about some of the appliances, and then I have the actual MLS input sheet here that we're going to kind of circle back to as well. And we're going to talk about what it is that the MLS is specifically asking. So as we go through the class, I want to basically lay some foundation about what the appliances are, what to look for, what to know. And then we'll kind of circle back a little bit to what the MLS is asking for, and we'll dig into that just a little bit more as well. So let me go ahead and begin the presentation here. Slideshow begin. All right, sorry. So understanding home features, appliances, and windows. So we're going to talk about this today. How do you better understand the various features and functions of a home? That's kind of the point of this entire series. So today, we're going to talk about different types of appliances. We're going to understand the differences in finishes and things like that. We're going to evaluate the types of windows. I was actually going to include lighting in here, but I opted against it. So we're not going to touch on lighting. We can kind of talk about that a little bit, but it wasn't as comprehensive as I really thought it was going to be. In terms of lighting, you're talking about LED, incandescent, and fluorescent. So I didn't figure there was a lot to really talk about there. But if you guys have any specific questions about lighting or anything like that, I'm certainly more than happy to help. But we're not really going to touch on that for the purposes of this presentation. I just forgot to take it out of this slide. And then the 5th one is to establish the best ways to market those features in your MLS and in other property. So let me move this up. There we go. When it comes to types of appliances, much more than anything else, more than flooring, more than countertops, more than just about anything else, it is 100% based on buyer preference. And what I mean is, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with investors that go in, they do a full renovation of a home, right? They come in, they put in all brand new appliances. And even though those appliances are brand new, the buyer walks in and goes, oh, they went with Kenmore appliances. I really wish they had used Samsung. You know, something like that. They're brand new appliances, guys. And they still are like, I wish they had this versus that. That's just the nature of appliances as it comes to a whole, right? So older people are going to look at brands like LG or Samsung as foreign. And instead, they're going to opt for those American brands like Frigidaire or GE. Okay, so this kind of is something that we see in real estate, maybe not as much now because a lot of our pool of buyers are maybe a bit more savvy, but especially in 55 and up communities and things like that, it wouldn't necessarily be a good idea to stick Samsung appliances in that home, right? But what's interesting is Samsung actually opened an entire distribution warehouse, a manufacturing distribution warehouse in the United States for manufacturing those appliances. So Samsung is actually one of the more American brands than some of the alternatives, GE specifically. But it's all about perception. It's all about that preference. So younger people, because let's be real, I've got Samsung phones, that didn't pop up. I've got Samsung phones, I have Samsung TVs, all my appliances are Samsung, my computer is Samsung. I really like that brand. So for me, because it's a brand I recognize, I know they make good quality products, I might prefer a Samsung appliance to an LG or a Frigidaire or something like that. Again, it's not that any brand is necessarily better than the other. So I'll give you guys an example before we move on. I have JennAir appliances in my home. Now, JennAir is considered one of the more premium brands, okay? My microwave is built in above my oven into a stack where my pantry and all those other things are. So I have cabinets on both sides, and then I have my microwave kind of at eye level, and I have my oven below it. Well, what's interesting is Gen Air doesn't make microwaves anymore. So when I was talking to the guy and he's like, oh, we should probably just replace the microwave. And I said, no, no, no. I don't want to have mismatched appliances and I don't want to go through changing all of my appliances. What can we do? And he said, what's really interesting is Gen Air and LG and Frigidaire, they use almost identical components, meaning the guts in their machine. He's like, let me look. And he found out that he could actually use the heating element and a couple of other pieces that were looking like they might have started to go bad. He actually replaced those with something out of a GE range, or a GE microwave rather, because they are the exact same components. So what was really interesting for me is, okay, whoever built this house paid for this upgraded brand of appliances. But what they didn't know is the guts are almost all the same, no matter which brand you use. Now, there are a few brands we're going to talk about today that are not the case, that are truly unique, and they are somewhat more expensive as a result. So what he did was essentially, I get to keep my Gen Air face, so it still looks like a Gen Air microwave, but the reality is it was replaced with GE parts because they are identical. So don't get too hung up on a brand, because once you get out of those super premium brands that we're going to talk about today, more or less it's mix and match. So it's kind of the difference between a Toyota and a Lexus. They're built on the exact same platform. They have the exact same engines. They just changed the brand. They changed the logo that's stamped on the top of it. So it's important for you guys to understand that aside from these super premium brands that we're going to talk about in just a second, for the most part, they're all about the same. So it just comes back to what is the preference that the buyer has. But sometimes if you can explain to them, hey, listen, did you realize that if you got into the back of a GE appliance, you might have a Whirlpool component, or one that Whirlpool makes an identical component to? Because at the end of the day, the original patent for a lot of these appliances aren't held by an original company. They are actually held by an individual who sold those rights to all of the brands at the same time, because it was more cost effective for them to use the parts and the pieces that they already knew would work than to go through all the R&D and investment and all these other things to try and find new components themselves. So everybody's playing from the exact same playbook. They just do a better job at marketing, or they do a better job at convincing the public that their brand is better than another, even though they're all using the exact same parts. So I just wanted to talk about that before we really dig into kind of the exceptions to that rule. So now if you guys are listing a high-end home, or if you have buyers that are looking at a high-end home, and for the purposes of this, I would say high-end is probably anything over maybe $600,000, depending on the market, maybe 500. But in all reality, you're not likely going to find Viking ranges or Sub-Zero refrigerators or Wolf brand items in homes under $500,000, just because they're very cost prohibitive, and we're going to talk about that too. So these are three brands that you want to become familiar specifically with the logos. So that's why I included pictures here that had them. Viking is always in this kind of chrome look. Sub-Zero has a little kind of snowflake in the middle, and Wolf is typically a range brand. Now, Wolf and Sub-Zero actually work together. So they kind of brand together. So it's very common to see a Wolf range with a Sub-Zero cooling element, whether it's a refrigerator, a freezer, both, wine coolers, things like that. Those two actually cross-promote and cross-brand fairly frequently. So while brand specific, like you won't normally have a Viking range with a Sub-Zero or something like that, because Viking also has their own refrigerators and that. But you'll notice these two, the Sub-Zero has the snowflake and the Wolf has the flame. So this is kind of the yin and yang as they work together. The Wolf works with everything that's hot, and Sub-Zero works with everything that's cold. So just something to be aware of, and I wanted to kind of point that out for you guys as well. Now, when it comes to appliances, specifically refrigerators and freezers and things like that, when you get into these high-end homes, so that's specifically what we're talking about now, is what you're going to find in these high-end homes. Typically, one of the biggest differences, these refrigerators are going to be 8 feet tall. So they're going to be significantly taller than your standard 5.5, 6 foot, 6.5 foot fridge that you're going to find in a regular home. They can range from 30 to 48 inches wide. So they're going to be typically a little bit wider than your 15 or 20 cubic foot refrigerator freezer combo. They're likely to be built into the bank of cabinets like you guys see in these two photos. These typically are not standalone units. They're typically built in. They're almost always what's called counter depth. So they're more shallow than some of your traditional fridges. And when I say fridges, I mean like refrigerator freezer combos, but I call them a fridge for purposes of this. They are going to be more shallow. So they're not going to be as deep as a traditional fridge may be. And they are going to traditionally have cooling elements that are at the top. So if you notice in a lot of these high-end units, you're going to have this venting at the top. And what we found is heat rises and cool air drops. So they found that they can be more efficient and they can actually have better, lower operating costs and more consistent, that's the word I'm looking for, more consistent cooling by having the cooling element at the top rather than in the back, which is where they are in most standard refrigerators and freezers. So it is a little bit different because they tend to be more shallow. They don't use that space in the back of the element, in the back of the refrigerator for the cooling. They put it on top instead. So that 14 or 16 or 18 inches that make this taller, that gets you from 6.5 to 8 feet, that's your cooling element at the top. Now, what this means is, let's say, for example, that you have a seller who says, hey, I've got this refrigerator. It's starting to kind of be on its last legs. I'm thinking about just pulling that out and sticking another fridge in there. My advice to them would be, if you're going to replace it with the exact same unit. Don't stick a traditional refrigerator in there, because what's going to happen is this 18 inches at the top is going to be open. And if you're sticking this into a bank of cabinets, it's going to look really, really weird. You're also, because these tend to be wider, you're going to have space on both sides of this, which is going to just make it look awkward. And honestly, even though that refrigerator may be the top of the line, most expensive one you could buy in the standard size refrigerators, it's going to significantly diminish the value of the appearance of that kitchen. So understand that's kind of some of the differences to what you're going to find in these high-end appliances. Now, the refrigerator freezers are much, much more expensive than what you would go to Home Depot and buy. Okay, it isn't uncommon to spend $10,000 to even $25,000 on a refrigerator. Now, most people in a home are going to go, dude, I'm buying a fridge, not a car. That's what these elements are. And that's why we don't typically see them in homes under about $500,000, because they are very price prohibitive. So keep that in mind. If the seller goes, hey, the fridge is kind of crapping out, I'm going to replace it, understand it's going to be a significant expense to replace. I mean, $10,000 on a low end for a Sub-Zero or a Viking unit is on the low end for sure. And so it's important that they understand, because if they had just bought the house, they may not realize that's a $15,000 or $18,000 refrigerator. They may have absolutely no idea. They just go, oh, it was here when I bought it. It looked nice. I liked it. I kept it. But now I've owned the home for a while and it's starting to not work as well. Just understand those units have that value for a reason. Now, one of the other bigger differences between those high-end units and even some of the premium standard units is that they're built to last much longer. So the normal ones will last about 7 to 10 years before they have to be replaced. It is not uncommon to have a sub-zero refrigerator that lasts 20 to 30 years. That's why they're built. That's why they are as expensive as they are. So if you have a buyer that comes in and goes, oh, this fridge is 15 years old, I'm going to ask for it to be replaced. Absolutely not. This fridge is only halfway through its life. It's going to last for another 10 to 15 years probably. So it's very different as opposed to a standard refrigerator. If it's 10 or 11 years old, it's at the end of its functional life. So if you walk in and you go, hey, you know, the house was built in 2010 and all the appliances are original, understand that your water heater, your refrigerator, your dishwasher, they're all on the verge of needing to be replaced. So that might be something that you request or you negotiate, or just something that your buyer keeps in mind. Maybe we encourage them to get a home warranty instead. But just know that yes, these units are much, much more expensive, but they last 2 to 3 times as long. So it is a bit of a trade-off. And then, like I said, if the seller has one and it's starting to die, advise them not to replace it with even a premium standard unit because it's not going to fit right. So when we start looking at some of these appliances, they can look really different. Sometimes you will have, like in this bottom right, the stand, kind of what we call the standalone. So it doesn't have the cabinets. It's not built into anything. It is truly standing alone. Sometimes, and more frequently, you're going to have units more like these two on the left-hand side that are actually built into a bank of cabinets or storage or something like that. Sometimes you will have a supplemental wine fridge on the side of it, like we have in the bottom left. And sometimes you're going to have these supplemental under cabinet refrigerators. So you'll see this a lot in like bar areas or things like that. You'll have these sub cabinet units that typically have glass front. So you notice in a lot of these premium units, you have glass front. That actually has become a very popular trend in recent years, and people really, really like that. Now I'm going to go back just a second because you'll notice here that sometimes you have these units that look like the cabinets themselves, and they may or may not have this glass front in it. So sometimes you'll walk in and it'll just look like a giant bank of cabinets, you know, kind of like they do over here. And you'll go, where's your refrigerator? And they'll go, oh yeah, it's actually right here. So you have these paneled fronts that you can't actually readily identify it as a refrigerator. So that's something else just to be aware of. Now, what absolutely blew me away is a couple of years ago, I took a $2 million listing. And he had these cabinet fridges for, I don't know what they're actually called, but we'll call them cabinet fridges. And one of them started to go out. And I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, they're what? Like, I mean, you can get a wine fridge for like $500 to $1,000, right? And he said, no, this is, I think he said it was $5,800 a piece. And because they share a cooling element, you couldn't just replace the one side. You had to actually replace both. So it was $10,000 for him to replace the one little cabinet fridge that was going out. So understand that when you look at these, the buyer may not appreciate how much value there is into some of these units. So just want you guys to be aware of that. Now, when it comes to ranges and ovens, and as always, if you guys have questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. It'll pop up and alert me that a chat just popped up, and I'll certainly be happy to answer any of them. When it comes to ranges and ovens, it's similar but different. Your premium ranges will almost always be gas and will occasionally be convection, but they will almost never be electric. And I'd say in all of the high-end units I've ever seen, I know for a fact Viking and Wolf don't even make an electric unit. They just, it's not even in their product line. So they tend to be wider than standard ovens, and they normally are going to have 2 ovens in a home. So it's not at all uncommon to have an oven on this side and an oven on this side. or to have an oversized range with kind of a heating area here on the side, and then a big oven and a small oven. If you look down here, you've got at the bottom right, you've got a range at the top with 2 ovens here. You've got a giant 8-foot refrigerator freezer. You've got a wine cooler with a second fridge. You also have another bank of 2 ovens back here, and you have a separate range back on that wall. So it isn't uncommon for some of these $1 million homes to have what they call chef kitchens. And what that means is multiple ranges, multiple refrigerators, multiple ovens. This actually is not that uncommon. So keep in mind, $25,000 for this fridge, about $15,000 for this range, about $12,000 for that range, about $10,000 for that bank of coolers, and then about another $8,000 to $10,000 in ovens back there. So you're talking 80, 90 grand just in the appliances in this kitchen. That's a lot of money, especially in a $300,000 or $400,000 home. That's not feasible. So that's why we don't really see that in these cases. And then Wendy said, why would you put the oven right beside the refrigerator? And that's actually a very good question. In these units, they are vented separately. So there is actually, on the outside of this sub-air fridge in the picture in the top left, there's actually what's called a firewall that keeps this fridge exceptionally cold because it is designed to be right up against these heating elements. So they are specifically and uniquely designed for that purpose. Because in a lot of commercial kitchens and things like that, you need to have everything very close together. And in turn, these ovens have elements that are built into the side that keep that heat from dissipating into the sides of it. So the heat actually goes backwards and up. So it's totally contrary to what you would have in standard appliances or in a standard kitchen. But that is actually a very, very good question. Back here. All right, so I mentioned induction cooktops just a second ago. So let's talk about what an induction cooktop actually is. Because there's a lot of misconception, because on this, it looks like a standard electric cooktop, like a glass electric cooktop, okay? But an induction top actually works differently. It emits an electromagnetic field that transfers that heat through the connection of the magnet that heats up. And what it essentially does is it causes your pan to become the heating, excuse me, sorry, I have hiccups, to become your heating element. Now, a traditional glass cooktop like this is going to heat up to the point that the bottom of the pan starts to heat up, and then that heat gets transferred. In an induction cooktop, that is not the case at all. I was reading a Consumer Digest report that was testing a bunch of induction ranges, and they found that 6 quarts of water in a pan could actually come to a rapid boil in less than 3 minutes. So it is a very, very efficient way to have heat, to cook, basically. And what's cool is these elements down here, these magnets basically, don't actually emit heat. So if I were to turn it off and take that pan off, within about 30 seconds, this is going to be back under 100 degrees. Because anytime, let's say, for example, you had a hot pot and you set it on granite and then you moved it back, that granite is going to stay hot for a minute or two, but it's going to cool down very quickly. Whereas on a glass range, like a glass top electric range, if you turn the heat on and then turn the heat off, it takes a very long time for that temperature to come down. The other thing is, let's say I turn this middle burner on high, but there's no pan on top of it. I could literally set my hand right on top of it and there would be no heat whatsoever. So it's a lot safer, especially if you have young children or things like that, that it mitigates that risk of burning or things like that. So an induction cooktop actually cooks very, very similarly to gas. And so for that reason, if you have a high-end home that does not have the ability for gas, you will find induction cooktops there. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that before we move on? Okay, so let's get into dishwashers for a second. Dishwashers are just a whole other world at this point. They are the easiest appliance to replace in order to get a very quick ROI on the kitchen. And what I mean is you could stick a brand new dishwasher in there and it's going to make everything look much more elevated, so that $300-400 that you would spend for a nice dishwasher is going to increase the value of that kitchen by exponentially more than that $300 or $400. Even in the event that the fridge or the range haven't been replaced, that dishwasher being replaced does add a good ROI. Now, front controls on a dishwasher have become taboo, apparently. So for 50 years, you've had the dishwashers with the panels on the front that have the buttons, and you say, you know, normal wash, whatever, it's all in the front. You can see when it's done. Now, all of it has come to the top. This is what everybody wants. So it is increasingly more difficult to find a dishwasher with the controls on the front. Everything is going to the top. So just be aware of that. If you have even a newer dishwasher that has the controls on the front, it's going to be viewed as less desirable than a low-end dishwasher that has the controls on the top. So again, if you have a seller that says, hey, you know, I've got $1,000 to spend, I want to put it in the best possible way, where would you put it? If you've got a really old dishwasher, that would be one of the first things I would replace with something that has top element control. Stainless steel is always preferred over black or white in terms of return on investment. So even if you have all black appliances, you would still get a better return from a stainless steel dishwasher than you would a black or a white one. I don't know why, but there have been multiple studies on this that show that stainless steel has a better return on investment to a future buyer. And then Bosch is the preferred brand right now. So everybody wants a Bosch dishwasher. Again, it's not that Bosch is any better than Samsung or LG or Frigidaire or GE or anybody else, but Bosch is just the brand that everybody seems to be like, oh, it's got a Bosch dishwasher. So again, for similar pricing, go ahead and step up and spend the extra $50 to $100 and get a Bosch dishwasher. I don't know why. I don't know if this is a trend that, you know, 5 years from now, people are going to go, ah, those Bosch dishwashers, they were garbage. I don't know why everybody stuck them in their house. But for right now, if you look up, you know, top dishwashers, blah, 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 everything is Bosch. So just be aware of that. Now, we're going to play a little game. I put guess the price, but we're not actually going to guess because I gave them to you. But when you look at this, you have a JennAir dishwasher that's just under $2,000. You have a Bosch dishwasher that's $625. You have a Samsung for $378, or you have a steam scrubber that is $9,000. Can you guys see the difference in these appliances? Because I couldn't. Like, I legitimately look at them and go, okay, it's a stainless steel dishwasher. Samsung, Bosch, JennAir, they're all sharing components, but JennAir has a perception of being a higher end brand, so they can charge 400% more than Bosch or Samsung. There actually is another Bosch dishwasher that was like $440, but I just wanted to kind of use some stuff for demonstration purposes. Samsung $378, steam scrubber $9,000. What makes this a $9,000 dishwasher? Because unless it's going to load itself and put those dishes away, I'm sure as anything not spending 10 grand on a dishwasher. but this is a brand that you would probably see in a very high-end home. And honestly, I was looking into it. I can't find that this thing is like a million times better than anything else. It's certainly not, what, 10, 15 times better than a Bosch. You know, I'm not going to buy 15 Bosch dishwashers for the price of one of these. So understand that if you have any of these in the home, you're probably going to get approximately the same return on investment, because the buyer's not going to recognize, oh, it's a Bosch dishwasher, so it's $600 as opposed to a Samsung dishwasher that's $400. Now, again, you can get a Bosch dishwasher for $400, but is somebody going to care that this has this tiny Gen Air brand on here for $2,000? Probably not. It's a dishwasher. You throw your dirty plates in there, come back an hour later, you put them away. It's a dishwasher. That's what they do. But understand that in the world of dishwashers, there is a huge swing based solely on a brand, a badge, or a perception of value, when in reality, there really isn't. So in my personal opinion, and in the opinions of those that I've studied in putting this class together, a stainless dishwasher is a stainless dishwasher is a stainless dishwasher is a stainless dishwasher, right? There's not a huge difference. Don't go spending $2,000 for a Gen Air brand, because I know in Gen Air microwaves, they can still use GE components. So I'm not inclined to go spend, 3 times as much for a Gen Air as I would for a Bosch, which is what most buyers want now anyway. So it's kind of interesting that you can have such a huge swing in an item that at the end of the day, all works exactly the same. You put the same exact cleaner in it, which is what actually cleans them. There's no real difference in them. Now, when it comes to washers and dryers, understand that washers and dryers do not always stay in the transfer of a home, okay? So I was a little bit hesitant to even put these in here, but I wanted to really touch on it because I feel like you guys deserve to know. Older people still want their top load washer and dryer. They just do, well, not dryers. Dryers have always been front load, but they want their top load washing machines. I don't know if it's having to bend over to put stuff into the washer, but they bend over to put it into the dryer. So, but there have been all sorts of studies that show that people over the age of about 55 have always had top load washing machines, and they want their top load washing machines. So if you are marketing a home in a 55 and up community and the seller goes, hey, I just added these brand new front load washer and dryer, you actually might have done yourself a disservice, because the potential buyer is more than likely going to want a top load. Excuse me. So just know that that's what it is. Whether it's front load or top load, agitators are a no-no. I guess there have been all these studies that show that agitators tear up your towels and damage your clothes and do all these other things, and really don't affect the cleaning ability. So the agitator was that rod essentially in the middle that had like the little spirally plastic pieces. And I should have put a picture in here, and I apologize. That kind of like spun around and shifted everything to be able to kind of keep everything moving in the washing machine. Well, now they figured out how to get clothes clean without an agitator. So that's what you want now. Something interesting I found was when it came to washers and dryers, stainless steel didn't actually add as much of an ROI as it did with all the other appliances. So when it comes to your ranges, your refrigerators, your dishwashers, stainless steel has a significantly better return on investment than their white or black counterparts. But for whatever reason, that isn't necessarily true in washers and dryers. When I was looking at some of the sales statistics, about 40% of people have purchased stainless steel, but 60% of the buyers in the last, I think it was from 2018 and 2019, 60% of the sales were still either black or white units. So stainless is still catching up. It's becoming the the preference in the market, but even as of 2019, black and white appliances, and mostly for appliances, it was white. There are some black ones, but the lion's share is still white washers and dryers. So I don't know why, but it is a difference it is an anomaly, especially compared to other appliances. So if you have to pay $2,000 for a pair of stainless steel or $1,400 for the white version of the exact same one, spend the $1,400 and get the white version, because that $600 that's required to step up to stainless steel will not prove to be as good of a return on investment as it would in other appliances. Now, something else I wanted to talk about was outdoor appliances, because this is even yet a whole other ball of wax, can of worms, whatever. If somebody has an outdoor grill, that is not an outdoor kitchen, okay? But we are more and more, especially in Florida, finding that buyers are desiring outdoor kitchens. They just want it. That's what they want. They gotta have it, okay? Now, not all outdoor kitchens are created the same. They may have a sink, they may have a fridge, they may have a grill, they may have a dishwasher, they may have an ice maker, they may have a pizza oven. They can be very, very expensive. So for example, it's got some wood storage down here at the bottom in both the top and bottom picture. This is a pizza oven, and so is this on the bottom. Those are both pizza ovens. For some reason, people have this idea that they want these outdoor pizza ovens, kind of these wood-fired pizza ovens. I don't know, but it's become a really hot trend. So if you have a seller that is talking about, or a buyer that wants to put in an outdoor kitchen, having a pizza oven is going to prove to be a very, very good return on investment out there. Now, you also have two different styles. This one on the top is actually covered. The one on the bottom is open. It all comes back to preference. Me personally, I wouldn't have this open outdoor kitchen, because every time it rains, you've got to go out and clean this stainless steel stuff every single time, because otherwise it's going to get just gnarly. I would prefer a covered kitchen. So the sink, the fridge, the dishwasher, you know, whatever it is, I want all of that out in my covered patio area, because for me, that is much more useful. Do I really want to be running out to the pizza oven and bringing in a pizza in the pouring rain? Probably not. So, but that being said, this kitchen is probably in a $3 or $4 million home. So it's something that is highly, highly desirable. Now, if you have this picture in the middle up here on the right, are you going to call this an outdoor kitchen? I mean, technically it kind of is, but I'm not calling this an outdoor kitchen. You know, so I just want to show you not all kitchens are created equal. So again, if we have a seller who spent $100,000 on this outdoor kitchen with all the stone and all of this, but if I'm the buyer and I go, oh man, all of that's out in the open, I'm going to have to clean it all the time, that to me doesn't have as much appeal as maybe even a less expensive kitchen that was covered. Now, again, I may be the minority in this. I may be the oddball that goes, dude, get over yourself. Just cover it up, wipe it down, and be done. I don't know, but I can tell you that's how I would look at it. So it's something to consider. Now, the other unique thing about these outdoor appliances is they have to be sealed to keep out the bugs and to keep out the moisture. So a little dishwasher that's designed to be outdoors will be probably twice as expensive as the exact same one that could be used indoors. And the same thing with the fridge and the ovens and all of that. If they are specifically designed to be used in an outdoor kitchen, you can count on the fact that they are going to be typically 2 to 3 times more expensive than their indoor counterparts. So that's something to really keep in mind when you're thinking about what is the value of this outdoor kitchen and can I really get a return on investment from it? It's a situation to really factor and let your seller kind of weigh out. Because yes, outdoor kitchens are very, very popular, but it has to function properly and it's got to work in the way that the buyer would want it to work. So keep those in mind. So as we talk about appliances, a nice kitchen package, so we're talking range, microwave, dishwasher, and refrigerator, can be purchased for about $2,000. That's typically stainless steel. That's usually like your LG or your Samsung or something like that. So if your buyer goes, hey, all of my appliances are really old, you know, they're kind of worn, is it worth spending the $1,800 to $2,200 to put a new kitchen in here? Absolutely. Because to a buyer, if they walk in and all those appliances are new, that's going to be well worth the $2,000 that the seller spent and probably worth more in terms of appraised value, in terms of perceived value. Brand new appliances is a very good way to get a return on investment. Much more so than putting in new counters or new cabinets or things like that. Because again, the color granite that I pick might be too busy or might be the wrong color or might be the wrong style for what the next buyer would want. But if you stick all new stainless steel appliances in there, doesn't matter what color the cabinets are, doesn't matter what color the counters are, that's going to be a very good return on investment for the next buyer. Understand your target demographic. So if the property is 55 and up, then you'll want to go more with GE Kenmore Whirlpool. I don't know why I can't say that word today. If you're going for a type of home that would cater more to the younger demographic, a home that has a lot of integration built in, technology integration, home security systems and Nest systems and all that, those are going to be your buyers that are going to be more drawn to a Samsung or an LG, a brand that they're going to recognize outside of home appliances. So just keep that in mind. And then again, stainless steel is always preferable to black or white. So in terms of appliances, do you guys have any questions before we move on? No? All right, so let's keep going. Now let's talk about windows. All right, so windows are fun because everybody just goes, windows are windows are windows, right? That's just what they are. Every home has them. They're just windows. They're not just windows. There are actually 8 different kinds of windows that you may see in a home. And this honestly surprised me. I learned more about windows in the last week and a half building this class than I ever thought I'd ever want to know. So buckle up because you're about to get some really cool information. You have double hung windows, awning windows, transom windows, stationary windows, casement windows, picture windows, slider windows, and bay or bow windows. All right, and we're going to talk about each of these. So double hung windows. Now this is not the same as a double pane window, and we're going to talk about that too. A lot of people mix those two things up. Double hung windows mean that the window can actually open from the top down or from the bottom up. Okay, so they are actually double hung. It slides vertically up and down, and they can open wide from either the top or the bottom. On a single hung window, only the bottom is going to lift up. Okay, so that's the difference between a single hung window and a double hung window, is that on single hung windows, which honestly is what you're going to see in most homes, are single hung windows. Because very few people are going to reach up and bring their window down from the top. They're going to open it from the bottom up. But what's kind of cool with a double hung window, because honestly, I'm like, why would anybody want a double hung window? If you have the awning of the roof, you can actually close or open the top part of the window, and you're not going to get as much rain blowing in and things like that as if you open the bottom. So it's kind of cool, just a little bit different and something to be aware of. The second one is casement windows. So these windows are hinged on the side and typically crank open. They can be hinged on the left or the right. Now, what we typically see are homes from like the 70s that have these crank windows. That's where these casement windows really started and where they came from. But in a lot of new high-end homes, especially on coastal homes, you will actually find casement windows. And what's cool about this is in Florida, we typically have a westward prevailing wind. So a window that opens up on a north-facing side of the home, right? So this is the north side of the home. The wind blows east and west, okay? Well, if these windows are open, and this is the other side of the house, and the wind is blowing against the side of the house, you're not going to get a breeze because the wind is going to blow right by that open window. In this case, in a casement window, we still have this side of the house. If I have windows that open up so that the wind that blows west to east gets caught in that open window, you're now going to be able to get a really good breeze into that room that you would not be able to get on a window that opened any other way. So that's why we're starting to see these windows start to make a little bit of a comeback in certain areas. Coastal properties, we're seeing it. In Florida, we're starting to see it more. There are some high-end builders that are starting to use these again. The other cool thing is on homes that have views, you notice how on the single hung windows, you have the giant bar in the middle, you have the lines down the side. These don't have that. So you get a much more picture window view while still being able to capture a breeze. So that's why we're starting to see some of these windows make a comeback. We also have awning windows. Now, they have these a lot in California and on the West Coast. We don't have them as much here in Florida, but they are actually hinged at the top that open outward to let air from the left, right, or bottom. Now, in this case, these are top-awned windows or top awning, and they are also bottom awning. So you see at the bottom here how these windows kick open. So actually, you're being able to get air in while still keeping the rain protection in place. Again, this is a really popular thing out west. It hasn't really made it to Florida. But the top window may actually open or it may be stationary. But what we're really talking about is like here at the bottom and here at the top, these awning windows that open up to be able to let it in while still keeping the picturesque view of the top, more stationary window. And then we have true picture windows. Now, we see this a lot in waterfront homes and things like that. You have these large stationary windows that are going to let in the most amount of light, but they don't open. So typically these windows are going to be treated with some kind of film or some kind of UV blocker that keeps all of the heat from that light to come in without impacting the view out. So these are very popular in homes that have mountain views, which we don't have in Florida, or beach views or waterfront homes. You may have something like a fireplace in the middle with two huge picture windows on either side that allow you to be able to enjoy that view out. So that's what a picture window is. We also have what are called transom windows. Now the transom windows, sometimes they're like a half circle above a bathroom window. You know, we see those a lot. They are the windows that typically can either operate to let in or be stationary, and they're mounted above another door or window just to let in more light. So we typically have these big picture windows in bathrooms. Sometimes they have like a stained glass or something like that. And then above it, we have like a little semicircle kind of window. That's what it's called, a transom window. That's what that is. Then we have slider windows. So these are windows that work a little bit more like a sliding glass door. They're in a track and then they slide left to right rather than opening bottom to top. So these are called slider windows. You also have what are called stationary windows. So these are similar to a picture window, but they can be made in nearly any shape or angle. So I actually have one of these in my dining room, or I guess my breakfast room. It is two giant panes of glass that actually come together in the corner. So there's no framing, there's no lines in the middle of the window. It is two solid sheets of glass that come together in a corner to make this stationary, like, picture window to look out over the back patio and the lanai. They are found mostly in contemporary style homes, and they may be in conjunction with operating windows. Then we have bay or bow windows. So bay or bow windows are windows that give you more interior space because they actually, so I'll kind of show you guys this way. In a room, they actually like kick out, and sometimes they have seating on the inside of it, which may have storage. There's a bunch of different things that you could do with it, but it's basically just a way to kind of give you some extra sitting area in a room. And you're going to find these most commonly in bedrooms. Excuse me, I got hiccups, it's killing me. They're a combination of windows, either with stationary windows or single pane or double pane windows, transom windows, things like that. Like these above are transom windows. Those are just the semicircles above the other windows. They're middle flanked by either double hung or casement windows off to the side if the middle ones are stationary. So while other windows may be single paned or older windows may be single paned or double paned. Pane just refers to the number of panes of glass in that window. So single pane windows, as the name would suggest, only have one pane of glass, one layer of glass. They are not as effective at keeping out noise or seasonal temperatures, but they can be insulated with a window film to help maximize their efficiency. Now, in Florida, homes that were built for probably 1980-ish are probably going to be single pane. Sorry. Newer windows are almost always double paned, just almost always. It is still possible to replace a single pane window, but they are becoming increasingly difficult to find. So if you crack a single pane window, it is likely that you're going to have to replace all of the windows in that room because you're probably not going to be able to find a single pane window that's the same size. There are still some glass shops that can just replace the glass inside that window frame. So that may be an option, but those are even becoming harder to find. More commonly, what we find are double paned or dual pane windows, which have two panes of glass in them. And on the next slide, I've got pictures. I can show you guys what these look like. But in between those two panes of glass, sometimes the space is filled with with a gas or with air. So there are some that actually have a heat resistant gas, and I can't remember if it was, I can't remember which gas it was. I read it and I meant to put it in here and I forgot. But they will actually put the two panes of glass in place, and then they almost seal it, and then they have one little tube in the middle that sucks out any air and replaces it with a different kind of heat efficient gas to help minimize the impact of that heat coming through the window. As a result, there is an 18% increased cooling in the summer in hot climates. So what they found is you can actually get almost a 20% increase in efficiency of your cooling system by changing the windows from single pane to double pane. So if somebody goes, hey, you know, my electric bill is $300 a month, is it worth it to put in these windows? Well, if they could increase their efficiency in their heating and cooling by 18%, depending on how long they were going to live there, that might become a good return on investment for them. So it's just something to consider. So when it comes to windows, you have the window case that goes around the outside, and then in single pane, you're going to have one single piece of glass, or sometimes you'll have two pieces of glass. This kind is typically filled with air, whereas in terms of glazing, you're going to have single pane. You could have double pane, which may be filled with gas, or there are triple paned windows. Triple paned windows, I typically have only seen in high-rise condos because of the direct sun that gets hit across the side of the building, especially on like waterfront condos and things like that. With being filled with that gas, you do get a much better increase in efficiency that results from having those 3 panes of glass. That is the only place I have ever seen a triple pane window, is in those high-rise condos that have direct east or west sunlight, or sometimes both. More often than not, in homes, what you're going to find are double paned windows. So, do we have any questions about windows? You guys are quiet today. Either I'm doing a really good job of answering your questions as we go through, or you guys are sleeping on me. All right. So before we go to that, let me clear out of here and let's work backwards here. Oops, let me minimize this presentation and let's come over here. So this is the MLS input, the Stellar MLS input. And on page 5 is where it talks about the appliances that are included, okay? So appliances are included, bar fridge. So again, if there's a bar where it has that under cabinet fridge, that's what that would be called, as a bar fridge. Does it have a garbage disposal? I didn't touch on disposals that much because honestly, there's like 3 brands of disposals and they all work almost exactly the same. InSinkErator is the most common one that you'll see. They're 80, 100 bucks. I mean, and honestly, no buyer's going to dig under and go, let me see what brand of garbage disposal is under here. They just don't care. So I didn't spend a lot of time on it. When it comes to the water heater, is it electric? Is it tankless? Is it gas? Sorry. Is there a water heater that's solar heated? Washer, wine refrigerators, built-in ovens. So the built-in oven would be like what I was talking about, the ones that are built into a cabinet. Washer, dryer, ice maker, solar water heater, water filtration, indoor grill. So is there an indoor grill built in? I don't honestly think I've ever shown a house that had an indoor grill. Most of the time they're going to have gas ranges or gas cooktops. Is the solar water heater rented? That's pretty uncommon, but it's in there. Cooktop, exhaust fan, range hood, reverse osmosis, water filtration system, tankless water heaters, dishwashers, whatever the home has, just go in and put in those check marks that correlate to the appliances that are in the home. The one thing I didn't touch on is a trash compactor. It's something that was really popular for a long time, and now people are like, nah, I'd rather have the cabinet space than a trash compactor. So we don't see them very often anymore. Now, the other thing is just this interior features. So because we're talking about interior and we're kind of wrapping up on it, and I didn't touch on it last class when I was talking about other interior features, you know, we covered crown molding, tray ceilings, things like that. This is something that you would just ask the seller or go through and say, hey, does the attic have an attic fan? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Central vacuum, is there eating space in the kitchen? Is it an L dining? I'm not sure what L dining is. Is there a pest guard system? Split bedrooms mean the master is on this side and then the other bedrooms are on the other. That's a split bedroom plan. Are there any vaulted ceilings? You know, do you have any of those rooms that have really high kind of pitched or peaked ceilings? Attic ventilator, coffered ceilings. Is there an elevator? That's an important thing to notate if it is. Living room, dining room combo. in these open floor plan concepts that a lot of people are going with, you have your living room, and then right behind it is the dining room, and there's no real separation to them. They're just kind of combined. So you may have that. Does it have a sauna? In Florida, I haven't seen a ton of homes with saunas, but maybe they do, higher end homes especially. Stone counters, walk-in closets, skylights, high ceilings, open floor plan, in-wall pest system. This typically has to do with like termites and pest control. When they're building the home, they actually put these tubes into the exterior walls where they can actually pump a chemical in there to keep pests and termites out of the exterior walls. So if your seller had it, they would know. But sometimes we don't know to ask that question. Open floor plan, solid surface counters, thermostatic attic fan, window treatments, ceiling fans, dumb waiters. Again, dumb waiters are something we used to see a lot. We don't see as much anymore. If they do have solid wood cabinets, you want to notate it. If they're a tray ceiling, same thing. So you want to really take the moment to understand what of those features, what appliances, what do those things have in the home, and make sure that you ask those questions and notate them appropriately. Because coming back to this presentation, what we don't want to do is we don't want to miss a potential selling feature that a buyer would be excited about. So especially when we're listing our high-priced homes, it's important to notate those items the buyers are going to specifically looking for. If I'm looking at $1 million home, I expect that it's going to have a Viking range or Sub-Zero or Wolf or something like that. I want that in that description. I want to know it has a Viking range and a Sub-Zero fridge. Sweet. Notate those things, because a buyer of that caliber is going to know the value of having those items. So make sure as a listing agent or as an agent that is looking at potential homes for a buyer of that caliber of home, that you really understand the value of what they are, and you could explain to them, hey, this unit is, excuse me, intended to last 20 to 30 years. So if it's 5 years old, it's basically brand new. Whereas a 5-year-old refrigerator in a normal, $200,000 house, you're like, okay, I maybe got 5 to 7 more years out of it before I'm going to have to start thinking about replacing it. And you might have 2 more years in it before you have to start thinking about replacing it. So that's when home warranty conversations become much more pertinent. In your public remarks, make sure that you showcase those items, those brands, those things that are going to make a difference as to whether or not the buyer wants to come look at that house. So don't let your listings get missed because you didn't specify what was in there. So as always, thank you for participating. I'll hang out for a few more minutes if you guys have questions. We can go through and talk about them. You guys have been too quiet on me today. What's going on? What do you think? What do you guys have? Hold on, I'll let some of you guys talk here. Everybody? Okay. So what questions do you have? Surely somebody has a question here about what we talked about. No? All right. Well, I'm just going to take that as a compliment and say that I did a really good job. So thank you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and taking the time to learn. Next week, we're going to talk about exterior features. So we're going to talk about different exterior types, wood frame versus block homes. We're going to talk about roof. We're going to talk about different landscaping to an extent. So it's going to be a really good class to kind of wrap this up with. But as always, I appreciate you guys being here and taking your time to learn with me. And if you have any questions or if there is anything I can do for you, I can learn how to talk, I'm always here to help. So make it a great day, make it a great week, and we will talk to you again soon. Have a great day.